since we're talking about postnatal depression, it also doesn't just happen right after birth, right? It can take a while even when your child has grown up. So I would like to know from your experience, Cylma, how does it look like to you, your mental health journey as a mother?
As a mother, I mean, I was quite blessed in my journey because I was back in India and I had a whole solid support system. Whereas I had my parents, I had my in-laws, and I was studying and I was working. So I don't think I even knew the term that is a postnatal depression. Maybe I was too busy and maybe I had a very better and also had a good support system. Right. So when my child was 2 months old, I've gone back to work. So it has been, I think, physically very exhausting, but mentally, I don't think I had the time to think. So I don't know what to say, but it was like my kids are brought up very well with by my family.
Right.
And myself, I didn't find struggling in any way. So I can say my journey was very good. And coming from that support system, when I moved 5 years ago, when we came out of India, and that is when I realized the shift in my parenting style because back in India, I always had someone to rely on.
Right.
If my child was throwing a tantrum and I was not able to handle, I would just leave the child with my mother-in-law and she would be able to handle him. But when I moved out of my home when my younger one was 3 and my elder one was 7 to another state of India, so that is when I first understood the challenges of raising children by myself. So that is when I first learned, but I think by then the child is already able to talk and tell their needs and you yourself are aware and it's always I feel I'm a very social person so I always make friends very soon and when I have friends who have exactly the same age of children and I share my things. I don't consider it as my burden alone. So usually I'm a very sharing person. Sometimes I'm oversharing, I feel. But then I think that helps me to realize that I'm not alone.
Right.
So when you can take advice from my friends or you can call back home and take the advice what to do, what not to do. And I think that's how I've raised my children. And then when I've come to Malaysia 5 years ago, so that my younger one is already 12. Well, currently my younger one is 12, elder one is 17. So now the situation is my husband is also not with me all the time. He works in another state of Malaysia, so he's only a weekend husband. So I'm a weekday mom handling my two boys, teenagers, by myself. So I think for me it's a journey where I'm a student, I'm learning along with them. And I feel I read a lot, so I'm aware of what's the trending, how to deal with them. And also I don't tend to compare how I was brought up with how I need to bring my children. So I think it's all a learning process.
Right.
And I have very good friends like Divya. I mean, very good support. Like always, when I talk to her, she know it happens, and it can like you do this, I do that. So I think it's very important, not only family support, but having very good friends whom you can talk and can share.
Right.
That's very important.
And even though you have all this support, it doesn't mean that you're always happy or it's always smooth.
No. You are. What do you say? It's your right to have down days also.
It's more demanding than having
a
child because again, so the research has shown that the marital conflict increases the most when the child is an adolescent. That's when the couple's opinions take big clash because the father will have his own opinion about how to raise a teenager and the boundaries that are supposed to be put on them, and the mother will have her own. And in such cases, there's always a primary parent, in most of the cases the mother, who is actually knowing everything that's going on, and there's the secondary parent, who's the father. Unfortunately, because of our whole system, the fathers spend time away working, mothers spend closer time with them raising the child. But then the conflict arises at this time. So it's the most perplexing for the parents when the child is an adolescent. Because the decision making is not as simple as what brand of cotton clothing to buy for your child or which brand of milk powder is the best. It is nothing like that. It's about which boundaries are which works best. But in the meantime, the child is also trying to establish their own independence, their own identity. So it becomes a triangle. The child with his or her own opinions and ideas about what they want to do in life, which may not be always right, and the father with his own opinions of boundaries to be established, and the mother with her own set of opinions. So that is where a family should come together and work together to create a more safer environment for the child. Because again, my mantra when I tell parents to come for counseling is practice what you preach. Because at the end of the day, the child automatically does what they see their parents doing than listen to what the parent is asking them to do. So you set your own priorities. When they watch you prioritizing yourself, they will feel safer, create the right priorities for themselves. So create a safe environment for a teenager. So when you are on the same plane, when you are discussing and communicating more, spending more time together as a couple, the child or the teenager feels that home is a safe place where I can explore and I can set my own boundaries safely. I can set my own independence and my own guidelines and prioritize myself. So I would say, as couples, you have to spend more time together. And of course, it's okay to argue. Argument is okay, but keep the arguments away from the teenager. By the time the teenager comes home, you should have solved your conflicts. And you should have arrived at a decision which suits both. There shouldn't be a higher party or lower party in a couple. You should have put all your opinions on the table, remove what you both don't agree with, keep what you agree with, and already reach an agreement so that when the child comes home, the table is all organized and think, okay, there is no conflict. I can be myself. Because you should remember the teenager is also spending a lot of time outside home dealing with their own issues. It is stressful for a teenager outside home also. Right. So home is a safe space. When they come home to a safe space, you know what is your safe space? Cuddles, warmth, good food, happiness. And when they don't get that, that's when more turbulence happens in the family. So I would advise the older couples, older parents, who are parenting teenagers and adolescents, to create a conflict-free space when your child is around you. Argue, but in a healthy way. Okay, you should have to set an example of arguing healthily also. So do argue, but if it is really getting above the hand, then argue away from your child.
Yeah. And in cases where parents do argue in front of their child and create this toxic environment, I see a lot of people, when they grow up, they're like, I want to have kids, but then I don't want to, give the same trauma to them, even though they are aware that, oh, my parents did this and I should just be doing the opposite and do everything good that I can. But at the same time, there's always this fear at the back of these people's minds is that what if I end up doing the same as what my parents did? And then especially when there's instances where like, oh shit, no. sorry, sorry, and there's instances where like, oh, I feel like I'm just like my mother. So, in end of view, what would be the advice for younger generations or anyone who wants to have children but then fear that they're going to repeat this generational trauma?
Okay, I would suggest that, okay, we all go through that about a certain point when we hated our parent. It's normal. Because it's also a process of becoming a person of your own, because nobody wants to grow up into their parent. Because
Right.
we are moving, every generation is progressing differently. So when you reach a phase when you doubt yourself, like, am I becoming my parents? I would say take your time. Write down the good things that you observe in your parents. It's okay to be a parent if it is something that you approve of. And write down a list of things that you don't want to do. And once you write it down in your subconscious, you already have the yes and no's set. So when you're following something that says yes, it's okay. Because again, there is genetics, there is science. You cannot be not your genetics.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little bit of genetic behavior that comes in. But we are more educated, more aware. So it's okay to sometimes be your own parent. But yeah, you can also, as an individual who is more aware than your parents, set your own examples of what to do. Like, I think, especially as Asians, not only Asians, I've spoken to many middle-aged people who grew up in toxic environment, and all they wanted to actually hear was a sorry from their parents. But parents never apologize, especially the generation before. They would never agree that they've been on the wrong, and they will never apologize. So the shift in future generation, future parents, is it's okay to apologize. I apologize to my kids. I'm sure they do too. So if I feel I'm wrong, and when they are expressing their viewpoint, I feel okay. Oh, I get your point. I'm sorry I did that to you. Or I'm sorry I took that decision. You should have spoken up to me. Next time I will hear you out before I make some choices.
And I think it's good for children to realize that parents can make mistakes, that there is
Exactly. Very
nothing,
important.
there is
Yeah.
nothing nothing like a perfect parent. You cannot be a perfect parent. You're growing as your kids are growing up
We
as
learn
well.
every day
So
with
we
them.
learn
Yeah.
along the way. So, like Divya said, it's good to apologize when you've made a mistake so that the child would feel safe enough to make mistakes in front of you and come back and say, Mama or Papa, I think I made a mistake. So, yeah, what the point that Divya raised is absolutely crucial in the journey of parenting.
Also, a lot of ego has been attached to being a parent as to I want to keep up my face in front of my society. I want to show the society what kind of a child. No, do not raise your child for out of your ego. Raise your child as a responsibility. You know, you're not raising a child for yourself. You're basically raising a child or a proper individual as an offering to the future. What kind of an individual do you want to offer to the future? A more responsible, sensible person, because your child could be the next prime minister for all you know. So if what is your image of your child when they are in such a leadership oriented position? So parenting is like guiding the child about how to navigate the world that they are going to grow up into. It is not about being perfect. Perfection is just not there. There is no such thing called perfection, because what is perfect for me may not be perfect for you. So it's a myth. Perfection is a myth. So let's not think about that. Let's just guide our child to accept that you will make mistakes and how to handle your mistakes and how to navigate the world that is going to happen in the next 20, 30 years.